You're listening to the audio portion of Workshop Wednesdays. Workshop Wednesdays is a free live discussion about topics affecting accountants, bookkeepers, and business owners. You can join the ABO group in Facebook to participate live Wednesdays at 10 a.m. Pacific Time. Just search for ABBO in Facebook. This podcast is brought to you by Schoolofbookkeeping.com, where you will learn, grow, and build a thriving bookkeeping practice. We have hundreds of lessons with almost every aspect of the industry. Start your free month today at Schoolofbookkeeping.com. We're here with another Workshop Wednesday brought to you by School of Bookkeeping. I'm here. My name is Dan DeLong, and over here with
Carrie Kahn
and
Kate Weil
from ADP joining us for we're coming in for a landing actually with our payroll fundamentals series. So we're going to need to say goodbye to Kate for soon, but we've got a couple more weeks with her or Rachel. But we appreciate you coming on and giving us a different perspective when it comes to payroll. So today we're actually going to be talking about one of the last things that you do with payroll when it comes to payroll fundamentals, and that is filing your forms. So this is like one of the last things that you end up doing, but it's typically where you realize that you did something wrong, right, Carrie?
Yeah, it's not good. You want to make sure always file. That's when if you're doing it manually, you realize, this isn't so easy.
Yeah, it's kind of like the litmus test of, did I set up payroll correctly? Because in your experience, Carrie, and working with other businesses, what typically happens when form filings go wrong? It's kind of like a horror story, when payroll forms attack.
When payroll forms are not filed, and businesses will get penalty notices, and often they exceed any, but people are trying to save money. They quickly screwed up. They end up spending more money for those penalties, trying to get out from under it, navigate it. It's a mess.
Well, what have you seen when, not only when they don't get filed, but when you go to run them? Right, and what kind of things have you seen where things go wrong when it comes to the form filing?
Well, if you haven't got your numbers entered in the system, or however you have them properly, it's a huge mess. If you try to do it the middle of the year and you don't take into account for people that you've paid from January through today, it's a huge mess. I've seen everything you can think of customers trying to shortcut this method. Not good.
Yeah. So if you're watching on YouTube or our website, you do, and you've done payroll forms, put in the chat, like where have you seen things go wrong when it comes to form files? Because I always thought that payroll forms was a really glorified payroll report, right? Like when you look at inside of QuickBooks and you run your payroll reports, some of them are like pre-filtered, but payroll forms like the W-2 or the 941, they only look for certain things. And
if the certain things are accurate.
Right. And it's a definite measurement of how well you set up payroll if the payroll forms look exactly the way that you expected them to. One of the things that typically will showed up for us when it came payroll form filings was the 941, right? Because some of the things on the 941 are numbers that are reported from QuickBooks, but then there were other things on the form where that was actually a calculation from the numbers that were on that came in from QuickBooks. So it was always this kind of shell game of, well, where did this number come from and why is it incorrectly? And typically it would show up with something like Social Security, right? Because Social Security is the taxable wages for Social Security multiplied by
1, 2,
one
4.
two 124, right? Which is 6.2% split between the employee and the employer, right? So the form on in QuickBooks would actually do the calculation based on the number that was reported, right? So it was kind of hard to say, well, where did this number come from? And QuickBooks was nice enough. At least they used to be. I don't know if they are available now. Maybe Landon can kind of chime in
Uh,
if they actually do. But they used to have clickable forms where it would be, you'd see the form itself, and you could click on the number or the box, and it would tell you where that number came from, and it would say, okay, it was either calculated on the form or it came from QuickBooks. Here's the report to run to be able to verify that number was set up correctly. Kate, does ADP have anything like that where you're verifying the number? I mean, like, what happens in the ADP world when when payroll forms attack, right?
So when we go to like set up an account, there's a part in the sales order that I have to go in and enter in the state IDs, and then when the employer signs off on them, they also then will sign off that either they're in applied for status or that they'll confirm that the numbers are correct. And then the back end team, let's say it's someone that switches over like mid-year, they'll check like the quarter one filings, quarter two filings, make sure those numbers match, make sure the company name matches, because the IRS, like, there's a comma, if there's an and sign, if there's an apostrophe, if any of that is off, the IRS will reject the filing. So our back end team won't even set up an account unless everything matches, and we have to have the previous quarter filings, all that accurate. If it's someone that's starting over in the beginning of the year, so they don't have like any way for ADP to check like quarter two, quarter three, they'll have to submit like their EIN letter, something of that sort. So then the team can go in and check to make sure that the address is correct, the name is exactly how it's supposed to be. So they kind of do a whole bunch of like I do it, then the employer does it, then the ADP backend team does it, and they won't even assign an account to be set up for the first payroll unless it goes through that whole process.
So in ADP land, the form filings are really a non-issue, right? Because you've already gone through all these due diligence. So have you had things where there's surprises, like, oh, I forgot to tell you
I've
about
had
this employee.
I've had a lot of times it's people when they pull the reports, they won't pull like all employees. They'll forget to pull like the termed ones too. So I'll run into that. I'll run into sometimes just needing to re-sign what we call our reporting agent authorization. So that's just one part on the sales order where they allow us to talk to the IRS on their behalf and deposit taxes. So if that part doesn't line up exactly, we'll just have to re-sign that one thing. And then the other issue we run into is when people do the applied for status. We need the numbers before the quarter's over in order to file the taxes. So if you don't get those numbers in, there is a penalty, because ADP has these taxes that we need to deposit on your behalf. We can't just deposit them to the IRS and say, hey, they don't have numbers, good luck. So we have to make sure that we have those numbers in a timely manner.
Got it. So you've taken pretty good steps to make sure that the employer and the employees, all that information is flowed through over nicely, because there isn't an ADP payroll offering that allows you to manually file, right? Is that
You
the
would
case?
have to like opt out completely of like ADP doing your taxes. So that the whole reason we have that kind of 6-step process is because ADP takes liability. So we need to make sure that we're also covering ourselves and make sure that everything is lined up. If you're gonna get a letter from the IRS and it's something on our behalf, we're gonna pay that fine. But
Mhm.
we have to do these due diligence to get the account set up because we do take liability. So it's kind of just a whole process. But once that process is over, it's kind of like, well, if you get a letter from the IRS, you just submit it right to run and they pay the fine, they get it all handled. They'll talk to the IRS for you. So it takes a lot off the business owner's plate. It's just those first few steps kind of going through it.
Yeah, it
Dan,
is. What? Go
there's a
ahead.
comment from one of our viewers.
Yeah.
Sherry Seller says she's experienced where the 941s do not match W-2 totals.
Yeah.
I would
And that's go ahead. What were you
I
gonna
was
say?
just gonna say that that's happened to me when, looking back, if the customer's trying to do it themselves and they're being sloppy about it,
Mhm.
because I would imagine that's something ADP would double check before you got that
Yeah.
far.
We've run into
Yeah.
it, the instance where it's like $9 off, and we have to go through. That's why when we pull reports, we'll pull like current quarter, we'll pull check date by check date, then we'll pull year to dates, and we make sure that everything adds up, deductions, everything, so that it is not a penny off. And if there is there was a $9 difference a few weeks ago, and me and Rachel had to sit there, look through all the balances, try to figure out where these $9 was. And it was just a voided check that wasn't on that reporting system. So when you pull the report, so once we pulled that report too, everything evens out, but they make sure that everything matches up to the penny.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's one of the things that that the IRS is pretty good about making
Fussy about that.
making sure. Yeah, they're a little fussy about things that don't match, and then you end up getting some kind of tax notice. So for the manual route, like if you did decide to do all this stuff, there's a lot of things that you end up having to do in order to file your payroll forms correctly. So the main thing with with the IRS is setting up through the EFTPS. So that I don't even know what that stands for. Do you know, Carrie?
Nope, I just know that it's that debit.
But that's
EFT is like an ACH, I
right.
don't know, taxpayer
uh,
service. EFT,
But
taxpayer
that's where you
service. Got
log
that?
in to be able
What?
to pay your federal tax liabilities, and then also file your form. So you have to tell QuickBooks. If you're doing it through QuickBooks, you have to tell QuickBooks about that login with the online payroll offerings as well as through ADP. Uh, Kate mentioned a reporting agent, right? So with did you find the answer of what it?
Yes, yes. Why, the answer is the electronic federal tax payment system. Now we may
Oof.
resume. Oh, see, somebody else did that too.
Right. That's why we have people hiding behind the scene, so we
EFT.
can do these things. So yeah, so with ADP and the online payroll offerings, they talk to the IRS or the tax agencies on your behalf, or they file those things on your behalf. So they have to fill out what is it, an 8655? Is that the form number, or you just Kate? Do you just is it all part of the onboarding process when
So
it comes to ADP?
yeah, it's part of ours is that RA form. So that might be just ADP's way of saying it. And then it depends on the state. So some states require power of attorneys. Some states require, there's a few different things. So it just depends on the state. And since CBG is in school bookkeeping, are all over the entire country, I have a little cheat sheet. So I just look to see what needs to get signed. And then when we send over that sales order, we make sure to include those other things as well.
And so if you're doing those things manually, like if you're doing those things for your clients, and if
Mhm.
you're located specifically in one state, sometimes that's just a normal type of thing. But if you're doing virtual bookkeeping and payroll is one of your offerings, it's it kind of makes sense to kind of offload that activity sometimes because you don't necessarily want to be caught in one of those situations where, oh, I thought this form would handle the this, and it turns out, oh, they actually needed some other form in addition to what you've already done, right? Have you seen that with other accountants and bookkeepers that you work with, Kate?
Um, Not necessarily. I feel like a lot of times I think the trigger point is when someone gets like a letter from the IRS and they're like, oh, wait a second, something's not right, something's not adding up. Or if it's like an accountant or a bookkeeper who is very like, just have it streamlined, have something else going on. Like, let's not just do this every quarter. There's an easier way to do it. But
All right. So so that's really where it comes down, where the rubber hits the road when it comes to filing your taxes or filing the payroll forms at the end of the quarter or the end of the year. And another thing that I noticed while supporting QuickBooks Online payroll is some states and some form filings require a payment at the time of doing the filing, right? And oftentimes, even though the date that things are due is maybe the end of the month, but they need to also get their money before it's actually due. So that's another thing to consider if you are doing the form filings on behalf of your client, or in the service that doesn't do the form filings for you, is to give that lead time to be able to make sure that the payment clears and posts properly. And because I unfortunately had a lot of conversations with people on the 29th of the month that would be like, I can't, it says it's past the due date. Well, the due date is
'Cause
the
it is.
31st.
Yeah.
Like, well, that you got to account for the fact that money doesn't automatically move, instantaneously. As much as we would like to say the speed of light is pretty fast, but the actual money movement itself does need to clear and make sure that those signals get bounced back and forth before it actually does actually move from one person's bank account to a tax agency. So you have to kind of keep that in mind. And some states require 5 days, some states require 2 days. So I mean, it's really difficult to keep up with all the different states, but it's another aspect of filing the payroll forms.
Mhm.
So, Carrie, anything else you want to add about filing your? Oh, one thing I thought of is when you switch payroll service provider, you want to be cautious of making sure that the old payroll provider doesn't file
Goes
forms on
away.
your behalf.
Goes away. Yeah, that wasn't totally my fault. I did give proper feedback, though. You know what the root of it was? It was the Pro Advisor exam around payroll, and they don't give you a sandbox to play in. So be careful when you're in your own QBO account that when you're looking at payroll stuff, you might inadvertently turn it on, even though you didn't turn it all the way on. You dim that switch a little bit, and then they file 0 returns for you. Don't do it. But
Yeah,
I don't
be
know how you
careful.
take the test without seeing that stuff. So it's a challenge that I did make them aware of last week.
Yeah. Yeah, so Carrie went and did the payroll certification in the Pro Advisor training, and in order to actually see some of the things that they were testing on, it required her to actually turn on payroll inside of her QBOA,
Inadvertently,
um,
I had no idea.
and and you can't just turn it on without providing some level of real information, right? So you can't put in fake EINs, you can't put in fake social security numbers. QuickBooks Online actually checks that stuff and will spit back an error message um, if you actually try to put in a dummy number.
You
And
can't.
so
So
she inadvertently turned on payroll and signed up for Intuit to do the form filings, and first quarter comes around, and her real form filings at 941 got rejected because Intuit submitted a $0 return before we could actually get into the real numbers. So that's one of those things that I never even thought of when it comes to filing your forms. If you're switching payroll services, especially there's never a good time to switch when it comes to form filing because you never know, because there's always something going on unless you time it exactly right.
Mhm.
so Sherry's asking, I did not turn on payroll in my company file, but by giving them some real numbers so that I could do my payroll certification, they just assumed it. I didn't officially flip all the switches on. So it doesn't
Yeah,
matter.
she
You can
didn't.
have a dimmer switch on and bam, things get filed on your behalf. So it makes it really hard when you're trying to get certified in payroll because there is no sandbox account to play with. So
Yeah, I mean, you can go into um, the sample company, but if you,
I
as soon as
didn't
you
turn it
leave
on.
the sample, if you, well, as soon as you leave the sample company, everything that you entered in is removed. So you have to do it all in one day.
Oh,
so,
yeah,
so
no, I didn't
that's,
turn it on. I just entered in some numbers, and the next thing I knew, it was a mess. So I don't recommend it unless you're using their payroll. I don't know how you can do the certifications. Like you said, you have to do a
yeah,
trial.
that's one of the things when it comes to, real services, but fake, fake companies, right? Like demo companies, but real services is really hard to, um, you know, walk that line, because we like to do, things with QuickBooks payments and, online banking and, because that's really where, a lot of the
Where
functionalities of QuickBooks really happen. But you can't just do a test sandbox company. You have to have some real data in there. And, you never want to have real information be impacted by a testing thing.
Mhm.
No. Julie Wheeler's asking a good question there. Are you gonna pull it up on the
Let's
screen?
throw that up there. Is the payroll for QBO decent, or have I've heard so many different opinions? Yes, I mean, what do you? What,
Well,
I'll toss that one over to you. I'm not going to ask Kate because she's going to say,
well, from my little experience by trying to do my payroll certification to earn CEs and to see how their payroll education was, I wasn't real impressed because I didn't really turn it on and they started filing zero returns for me. And Tan and I spent an entire day trying to get to the answer to get help, and we didn't get really good help. So, in my opinion, the support in this product is not as good as it should be. We never could get to the right support. We were actually
yeah,
accidentally turned on Elite Payroll. We were supposed to get great support, and we never could find it. So, uh,
yeah. I think that's where it gets confusing. Like if 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 your payroll is fairly simple, right?
Mhm.
Um, and it's not too complicated when it comes to you know deductions. If you're running an ice cream shop, and and those types of things where you have maybe part-time employees, and you're not necessarily concerned with the employee HR side of things. QBO payroll is not so bad, right? um, and it runs pretty well. But if you want to get a little bit more in detail, and we'll actually have um, some folks from ADP is like, well, what if you need to take your payroll to the next level?
Mhm.
That's where another, and payroll services that specialize in this type of stuff is pretty good. Now, the one thing that QuickBooks offers that nobody else does is the integration piece of it, right? Like if you're doing your payroll inside of QuickBooks, um, the financial impact of those paychecks is going to be a lot greater when you're
Mhm.
doing it inside of QuickBooks than if you have an outside payroll service. Um, we tend to recommend, if you are going to use a QBO payroll, do the Elite payroll service, right? Because they will because just to Kate's point, they take the liability, right? Like they have a guarantee that things are going to be set up properly. So they will do that due diligence up front. Now it's a little bit of heavier work on the front side of things, but you have that peace of mind that those things are going to be handled properly when it comes time to form filings and things like that on the flip side of things. But if you have a little bit more complicated payroll, then it might be worthwhile to look at an outside service right off the bat, right?
Mhm.
Before jumping in the QuickBooks Online payroll service and then realizing, oh no,
I need more.
I've now jumped in and I need to go somewhere else because now you have to switch payroll even mid-year when you just started payroll.
And with mine, it was my sample file, and we get Elite for free, but somehow it was because I didn't really onboard correctly. I wasn't assigned I mean, I didn't get the right phone number. It was a nightmare. So again,
Yeah,
I agree with you. If you're going to do QBO payroll, go for elite. Go for elite and
yeah,
get it done right. Don't try to cut
yeah.
corners and make mistakes and cost your customer or yourself money for penalties.
And that's why I think where outside pay, other payroll services tend to be rise above the QuickBooks, because if there is a problem, and inevitably there will be a problem. I mean, that's kind of what the theme that we've had over these payroll fundamentals over the past 6 months, is that there's so much to know about setting things up properly. If you take on that burden of doing it yourself, um, you could potentially, you're dealing with other people's livelihoods, when it comes to payroll, because payroll is such a fundamental part of a business. um, do you want to have that happen? And when things do go wrong, because they will, what kind of service and support do you have on the other side of that? And that has been where we have been. I used to be that guy, but I'm not on the other end of the phone anymore to be able to help people. So that has tended to decline over the years. No fault of my own, right? But
We tried
um,
to
but
we tried
it's
to get help and never got it.
yeah. I mean, we knew what we wanted, and we still got passed around for several hours. Whereas when you have a nice relationship with someone at ADP, who's foolishly given you her cell phone number, um, it's pretty nice just to go at all hours of the day. And it's like, hey, we need help.
It's just, I come from a customer service background, and it's easier because then I'd rather just know what's going on instead of coming back to like a work phone and being like, okay, here's messages. What can I do? It's just easier. And like Sherry said, there is outside payrolls that do integrate with QuickBooks. So like ADP integrates with it. I do think QuickBooks Online, like a lot of people use QuickBooks Online. It's a good product for payroll. It's just when things become more intricate, you're worried about tax filing. When things become more complex, I feel like people typically switch over from QuickBooks Online or QuickBooks Desktop when it was to ADP because they got a tax notice and they were like, well, I wish I would have paid ADP before instead of saving some dollars with QuickBooks. But it definitely, I mean, it's a product that's been out there for a while. It's a good product, and it is. I know family friends that use it, but there's definitely other options to just explore. And yeah.
Yeah, I think. Oh, is that the hurricane?
Yeah. Well, I just washed it away. So the storm surge. So we do need to speak to Susan, who started up saying she's sitting and not so.
Yeah.
Yeah, she's in Tampa.
We're all on the coast right now. Everybody in this Zoom call. So we're all like going. So Susan, I just had a heart attack. Are you good?
Julie, if you want to put your email address in there, I can reach out to you.
Yeah, we don't want pulling teeth to happen.
Definitely not.
I think Carrie and I just went to this Appy camp last week, and I think that was the challenge when it came to accountants, the accounting community, and ADP. They've either had a prior bad experience with ADP, and then that has kind of soiled their relationship. But the folks that have a good relationship with ADP, it's really the person like Kate that they've built a relationship with. So if you do have the ability to connect with an ADP rep, I happen to know a really great one. Um, that is the I think that's the key of solving having a guide when it comes to managing the payroll relationship, whatever it happens to be, that you are working with or promoting as an accounting or bookkeeping professional. Having that personal relationship is key in Paramount. So if you need to have find one, just put your contact information in the comments here, and we'll get Kate in touch with you.
Yeah.
So, so next week we're going to talk about some of the things that some of those complications or complexities of payroll outside of just running the payroll and filing the forms, right? So, so we'll have some folks on like what happens more when it's more than payroll, but it still involves your payroll. So we'll continue with that. Carrie, Kate, any closing remarks? We've been chatting for about a half hour now.
No, I think just everyone who's in the path of Ian, stay safe, charge up the phones, charge up. I used to live in Florida, so I know all about I was there for Irma and all the other hurricanes. So Susan, everyone else, stay safe, stay dry, and thanks for tuning in, everyone.
She says, thanks for the diversion. It gets old watching the weather.
I'll just start presenting. Here we go.
Yeah, I made it through hurricane.
Cone of uncertainty.
Which was a long time ago. That shows my age. And I lived on the Weather Channel. I mean, I slept with it on to the point where I wanted to throw my TV out the window. So, but right. Susan, you're not alone, because that thing's coming across and that's going to sweep and say hello to the three of us. So
I know my golf tournament got canceled. Now I'm like, what are we going to do?
Now what are you going to do?
I don't want this. So, I'm still in a little bit of denial.
Yeah.
My favorite place to be. And then my phone had to rudely interrupt our nice chat. So.
Yeah. Well, why didn't I not get one? I think my phone thinks I'm in Pennsylvania.
You haven't gotten one yet? Well, maybe it's coming here first, because remember, I'm in the south of South Carolina. Right. I can't get back to notifications. Here it is. Okay. Yeah, we've got a storm surge warning in effect for the next 36 hours. Oh, that's nice.
Oh, nice. Carrie, get some more wine. You'll be good.
I've got some.
And provided we don't get washed away, we'll see you next week. Another workshop Wednesday. Have a great day, everyone.
Stay safe, everyone.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.